it's smoky, it's fruity, and it's tropical. It almost reminds me of, you're not gonna believe this. Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video I'm going to review of the Tomintoul with a Peaty Tang single peated malt Scotch whiskey. Now it should say peated single malt Scotch whiskey. The single should precede the malt Scotch whiskey, not peated in between the single and the malt. Not sure how they got away with that. But what this whiskey actually reminds me of, and some people are going to be offended, some people are going to be convinced that I'm absolutely nuts. It reminds me of a peated Irish whiskey. Now I'm going to explain why, but first, here are my notes. Tomintoul with a Peated Tang, single peated malt Scotch whiskey. It's from Tomintoul Distillery in the Glenlivet area of Speyside. It's first released in 2007. It's a marriage of 4 to 5-year-old peated whiskey and 8-year-old unpeated whiskey. It's bottled at 40% alcohol by volume and sells for about $53 in my neighborhood. So I spent about 4 months doing Irish whiskeys. A lot of them are at 40% alcohol by volume, and there's a certain characteristic that whether you're talking about the single malts or whether you're talking about the single pot stills or the blended Irish whiskeys, with the exception of maybe the single grains, there's a certain Irishness I find in all Irish whiskeys. I spent months, many months doing Islay peated whiskeys. I've now been for a couple of months doing Highland peated whiskeys. And the one thing that kept coming back to me over and over again was how much, in some ways, this reminds me of an Irish whiskey. First of all, a lot of Irish whiskeys are bottled at 40% alcohol by volume. And not that there aren't plenty of Scottish whiskeys, particularly the blended Scotch, but I would say percentage-wise, a lot more of Irish are at 40%. Mostly, I'm going to say, it's the fruit character and the texture. So it's very tropical on the nose. You get pineapple, green apple, a common characteristic I get in a lot of Irish whiskeys, particularly Jameson. It has no salty or oceanic character whatsoever, which you would expect being in Speyside and far in from the ocean. Get a little bit of melon. Now on the peat side, I get some smoked ham and a little bit of ashiness. And it's somewhat tropical. But where the Irishness seems to come in, I know some people are going to be offended, some people think I'm crazy, it's actually on the palate. A lot of Irish whiskeys, particularly pot still and the blends, have a sort of a silky, glossy, oily texture. I'm getting that on this. I was getting more when I first got into the neck, but I'm still getting it. It's very silky, very smooth. There's no like huge bite, of course. It's only at 40% alcohol by volume. But the fruit character, tropical green apple, more like a Jolly Rancher, candied green apple. The smoke character is sort of ashy, but there's sort of a slight sort of baked ham character as well, or smoked ham character. Now, I thought, well, before I make a complete jackass out of myself and make such a statement, I actually took a glass of Jameson and dropped in about a teaspoonful of Lefroy 10. Let it marry together for about a half an hour and then went side by side. While it wasn't the same, I think Jameson isn't 100% bourbon cask, right? Got a little bit of sherry cask in there. I think that changed a little bit. But while they weren't the same, I could see the similarities in terms of the fruit character, in terms of the texture on the mouthfeel, and in terms of the ashy smokiness and the way it interacts with the whiskey. So, if you like Irish whiskeys, and one of the main things that you like about Irish whiskeys is the mouthfeel and is the texture, I think you're going to like this whiskey. if you're not a big fan of Irish whiskeys, right, and you want actually a whiskey with more punch, more grab, a little bit more in your face, both in terms of alcohol, in terms of body, in terms of the peat, then you're not going to be a big fan of this whiskey. The peat level on this is medium. It's not a lightly peated whiskey, but it's also not like its bigger brother, which is the Old Ballantrae 10-year-old, which is a heavily peated whiskey, also from Tomintoul Distillery. It's not like Old Ballantrae. So Tomintoul actually produces 2 peated whiskeys, the Old Ballantrae and its lighter brother, the Peaty Tang. I like them both. But need to go side by side, go head to head with both of these. I'm going to do that in a live stream, which I provide more information about Tomintoul Distillery and these 2 whiskeys. I'll go side by side, but I'm going to do that in a live stream where I got more time to go into it in a whole hour. In the meantime, what would I give this in terms of a score? Challenging the score because it is very, very, very different. I think it fits a particular niche with a particular consumer, particular palate. Someone doesn't want super heavy peat, and they want more than a lighted peat. They don't necessarily want a real high alcohol impact. They want something a little bit lighter and fruitier, maybe a little bit more tropical. I think it fits a particular profile that people are going to like. It's easy to drink. It doesn't have a lot of complexity to it. It doesn't have a lot of range. It doesn't have a lot of development, right? Pretty much what you get up front and the middle and the finish is pretty much the same. The length of the finish is moderate. It's not a super long finish. It's also not short. It has both fruit and a little bit of smoke in the finish, which I like. It doesn't just finish, completely smoky. In terms of sweetness, and I would say it's moderately sweet, and it remains moderately sweet all the way through, right? So, again, me personally, I think it's just an okay whiskey. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't put me off. I'm not wow about it either. I just think it's, it's a decent whiskey that fits well with people who are more inclined to something Irish, and yet they want something a little smoky. Now, when you think smoky, peated Irish whiskeys, you think Connemara, you think perhaps Slave Leg, or you think perhaps Denneville. It would be interesting to go head-to-head with a Denneville Irish whiskey as well. Perhaps I'll do that. But that's somewhere in the camp. It's probably closer to Denneville than it is to Connemara. Connemara is too Islay-like. This is nothing like Islay. So I think that the Connemara is more Islay-like, so it's not even in that camp. All right, so what would I give in terms of score? I'm going to go solid 86 points. I'm going to go 86 points. It's a good whiskey. Only $53, but in that price range, there are some Islay whiskeys that would grab my attention more for about that same price, and so it's going to be compete. I don't think it can compete, say, with an Ardbeg 10 or even a Lafroig 10 or anything like that. It's just not going to bear. It's a completely different character on its own that is probably a better head-to-head match in comparison, I would say, probably with the Denneville Irish whiskey. Alrighty, that's it for this review. If you like watching my videos, but you've not yet subscribed, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe. Ring the bell to be notified when I go live, and if you are one of my Patreons, I want to thank you very much for supporting the channel. Alright, until next time, cheers.